makes it impossible to accidentally ruin your fine stereo records.
By age 12, we had already mastered a strange little toolbox of skills. No coaches, no classes, just scraped knuckles and the expectation that we would figure things out. Number 15. Finding answers in the encyclopedia. A school report meant working the whole set, one volume leading to another, usually discovering somebody had shelved M in the wrong spot. You copied facts onto lined paper, then rewrote them because teachers could spot encyclopedia phrasing from across the room. And every family quietly knew which volume got the most use: human body. Number 14. Writing in cursive. By 12, most of us could write a thank you note an adult could actually read. One sheet of good stationery, no delete key, no autocorrect to blame. You slowed down, planned the sentence, and tried not to drag your hand through the ink. Mess it up, and you either started over or turned the blob into a very ambitious lowercase e and hoped Aunt Barbara wouldn't notice. Number 13. Knowing your manners. Manners weren't a personality trait back then, they were equipment for surviving the adult world. Sir, ma'am, standing when an older adult walked in, a real handshake, even if it meant your 4 small fingers got crushed by a man named Mr. Henderson. You looked up, answered clearly, and survived 6 grueling minutes of property tax talk. Number 12. Dropping the needle without scratching the record. Changing a 45 without scratching it took the steady hands of a tiny watchmaker. You lifted it by the edges, slid it over the spindle, and lowered the needle with 2 fingers, usually right as everyone nearby decided to start wrestling. Too fast, and it skated across the groove with a sound that could stop a heart. Number 11. Waiting without complaining. A real line. No phone, no headphones, nothing but the back of somebody's coat. Bank, pharmacy, grocery store, waiting on a price check from another dimension. Complain, and you got the look. And the look ended it before it became a speech. We studied candy racks, read gum labels, counted ceiling tiles, and somehow civilization continued. Number 10. Whistling loud enough to call the block.
I never could do that.
It's easy.
You learned it by watching somebody older, usually after 3 days of producing nothing but a wet hiss. But once you nailed that 2-finger blast, you could stop a ball game, call a friend outside, or make every dog on the block reconsider its rank. Every block had its own sound system, and somehow we all knew exactly which whistle belonged to whom. Number 9. Letting out your own hem. Growth spurts didn't wait for new pants, so you pulled the old hem's thread, dug out the tomato pincushion and the good scissors nobody else could touch, and remarked the chalk line at the length your mother trusted, not the length you thought looked right. Stitched by hand around the whole leg, mostly even. It was never quite invisible up close, but from 3 feet away in the school hallway it held, and it bought you another 4 months before you outgrew the pants all over again. Number 8. Tying a knot that held. A square knot, a clove hitch, or maybe a bowline. We learned knots because things simply needed tying. Tarps came loose, boats drifted, and clotheslines sagged. A good knot was practical intelligence. It held when needed and came apart when the job was done. Miss one step in the sequence, around, through, under, back, and the whole thing failed. If these memories feel familiar, you probably still remember the smell of a hot lawnmower engine. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I spend my time remembering the ordinary parts of American life that turned out not to be ordinary at all. And hey, if you're hanging out on Facebook, come join the nostalgia crew. Number 7. Building a treehouse that held your weight. Real hammer, real nails, questionable lumber. A treehouse usually began with 3 boards, 1 rope, and a plan designed by kids who had never studied load-bearing anything. Whoever had the nails became the project manager. Imagination could call it a spaceship, but gravity remained stubbornly literal. You tested your work by placing 1 foot on the board while keeping the other safely attached to the tree. Number 6. Putting the bike chain back on. A bicycle chain always came off at the worst possible moment, usually 6 blocks from home, near a puddle, while somebody faster was already disappearing around the corner. There was no calling for a ride. You flipped the bike upside down on the grass, balanced it on the handlebars and seat, and stared at the chain like it had personally betrayed you. Then you pulled it back over the sprocket, turned the pedal slowly, and tried not to pinch at least one finger. The bike had failed, but you had not. You wiped your hands on the grass, turned the bike upright, and raced to catch everyone else. Number 5. Fixing a flat tire. This was one of those skills that grew up with us. First, it was the bicycle tube. You removed the wheel, pulled out the soft rubber tube, and lowered it into a sink or bucket of water. Then, you slowly turned it, watching for that tiny stream of bubbles that revealed exactly where the air was escaping. You dried the spot, roughed it up, added glue, and pressed on a patch that looked far too small to save anything. Then came the hardest part, waiting long enough for it to hold. At 10, that little repair got you back to the ball field or the swimming pool. A few years later, the same basic logic followed you to a car tire. Find the problem, remove the nail, seal the hole, check the pressure. The tools got heavier and the consequences got larger, but the lesson stayed the same. A flat tire was inconvenient. It might ruin your shirt or delay your plans, but it was still a problem that could be understood and fixed. Number 4. Getting through a schoolyard fight. This is not the charming part of childhood, but it was real. Most schoolyard fights were short, clumsy, and far less heroic than anyone later claimed. Usually there was a shove near the bike rack, a backpack hitting the ground, and a circle forming before either kid had decided whether they actually wanted to fight. Then came 2 scared children swinging badly while everyone nearby became an expert commentator. The real skill was not learning how to fight. It was learning what happened after anger took control. There was the shock of getting hit, the embarrassment of missing, and the sudden realization that the principal, your teacher, and both sets of parents were about to hear the story. Winning rarely felt like winning. Somebody had a swollen lip. Somebody cried after pretending not to. Then, after the lectures and punishments, you still had to return to school. The other kid was still there. You might sit 3 desks apart, share a textbook, or stand beside each other in gym class. Eventually, you had to figure out how life continued after the worst 30 seconds of your week. Number 3. Living with disappointment. The trip was canceled. The toy was sold out. A package never arrived. Your best friend got invited somewhere, and you did not. Sometimes you had saved allowance money for weeks, only to discover the thing you wanted was gone. Sometimes you stared at a posted list and searched for your name twice because you were certain you had simply missed it. Adults did not always rush in to erase the feeling. They might say, "I know," or "that is tough," and then allow the disappointment to sit there. That was the difficult part. Nothing immediately replaced what you had lost. There was no surprise reward waiting in the car. You still had to go home, eat dinner, finish your homework, and brush your teeth while feeling completely miserable. But somewhere between bedtime and breakfast, the feeling changed. It did not vanish, but it became smaller. That was the skill. You learned that disappointment could hurt without destroying everything around it. A bad afternoon was not a bad life. You could feel jealous, angry, embarrassed, or left out and still keep moving until the world felt normal again. Number 2. Riding the bus alone. Exact change in your pocket. The route number written on a scrap of paper. A warning to watch carefully and not miss your stop. Then the bus doors folded shut, and suddenly you were alone in the world. If you got distracted, the driver did not circle back because you were 11. You got off at the next stop, looked around, and figured out what to do. That small trip carried real responsibility. You had to manage your money, know where you were, recognize where you were going, and ask for help if the plan went wrong. For 20 minutes, nobody else was solving it for you. Number 1. Getting home before the streetlights. Be home when the streetlights come on. That was the instruction. No watch required. No parent checking your location. You watched the sky change from bright blue to pale orange and noticed the shadows stretching across the sidewalk. You knew how long it took to bike home from the creek, the schoolyard, or the vacant lot. You knew which hill would slow you down, which shortcut cut behind the houses, and how much time you had once the first porch lights began clicking on. The streetlights were not simply a curfew. They were a test of judgment. You had been trusted with the afternoon, But you were also expected to return that trust by showing up when you said you would, not 20 minutes later, not after somebody drove around looking for you. And that was the skill all the others had been quietly building toward. The knots taught you that the right sequence mattered. The hem taught you to finish a job right even when nobody was watching that closely. The chain and the tire taught you to solve problems without panicking. The fight and the disappointment taught you that difficult moments could be survived. Together, they taught the same quiet lesson. You could be trusted with a little piece of the world. Back in that vacant lot, the kid hears the first streetlight buzz awake. He wipes his greasy hand on his shorts, gives one last whistle toward the next block, and starts home. Not because anyone came looking, because he said he would. Thanks for walking down memory lane with me today. I'll see you in the next one.